They say you should never hike alone in the far north, not because of the weather or the distance between huts or even the bears. The old Sami have a different reason, one they don't usually share with tourists. They say there are things in the mountains that watch, things that learn, things that take. We like to think we understand the wilderness. We map it, we mark trails through it, we build huts and bridges and pretend we've tamed it. But the forest doesn't care about our maps. The mountains don't acknowledge our trails. And in those vast stretches of untouched wilderness, in places where humans are rare and temporary, maybe something else has learned to live. Something that's been there far longer than our hiking routes and tourist cabins. We tell ourselves these are just stories, folklore meant to keep us cautious, to remind us to respect the wild. But every piece of folklore starts somewhere. Every legend has a seed of truth. This story was sent in by a listener. Let's call him Eric. What happened to him on the King's Trail in Sweden in September 2024 challenges everything I thought I knew about what exists in the empty places of the world. The story has been translated to English. This is Eric's account. Make of it what you will. I had been on the trail for 3 days when I first saw the boot prints. They were in a patch of mud near a stream crossing, just past the turnoff to Allesjöa. I'd stopped to refill my water bottle, and when I stood up, I noticed them. The same tread pattern as my boots. The same wear on the outer edge of the right print where I overpronated slightly. I stared at them for a moment, then looked behind me at my own tracks leading up to the stream. Lots of people wore Lundhags. It was the most common hiking boot on the King's Trail. I was being paranoid. I filtered my water, shouldered my pack, and kept walking north. The weather had been good so far. Cold at night, but clear. Late September meant the summer crowds were gone and the winter snows hadn't started yet. That transitional period where you could still hike comfortably during the day but needed a good sleeping bag at night. I'd done this trail once before, years ago, and remembered this section. The long descents into valleys, the birch forests that were starting to turn yellow, the mountains in the distance with their first dusting of snow. I was hiking alone this time, needed to clear my head after everything at work, and my usual hiking partner had cancelled last minute. It felt good to be out here, with just my thoughts and the sound of my boots on the trail. That night I stayed at the hut near Salka. There were 2 other hikers there, a couple from Germany who nodded politely and kept to themselves. I made dinner on the gas stove, ate quickly and went to my bunk. The hut was one of the smaller ones, just 2 rooms with 4 bunks each. The Germans took one room and I took the other. I woke up around 3 in the morning. I'm not sure what woke me. The hut was quiet. No wind outside, no sounds from the other room. But there was a smell, faint, like pine smoke, even though there was no fireplace in my room. I lay there for a while, trying to place it, then eventually fell back asleep. The next morning felt normal. The Germans were already gone when I woke up. I made coffee, packed my gear, and headed out. The trail climbed steeply out of the valley, and I settled into a rhythm, watching my boots find purchase on the rocky path. It was mid-morning when I saw him coming up the trail toward me. The path was narrow there, cutting through a section of birch forest. I saw the movement ahead and expected the usual trail encounter. A nod, maybe a brief word about the weather or trail conditions. Then we'd pass and keep going. But as the distance closed, something felt wrong. He was wearing a green Fjallraven jacket. The same one I was wearing. Same black osprey backpack. Same reflective patch on the side that I'd sewn on last year after catching a tear on a branch. My pace slowed. My brain was trying to make sense of it. Similar gear, that was all. Lots of people had the same setup. But then we were 10 meters apart. Then 5, and I could see his face. It was my face. Not similar, not someone who looked like me. My face. Same beard, same hairline, same small scar above my left eyebrow from a childhood fall. But wrong. The eyes were too wide, the skin too pale, the mouth closed but somehow too flat, like it didn't quite know how to rest naturally. We passed each other on the trail. Neither of us spoke. I turned my head to keep looking at him as we went by, and he did the same, his head swiveling to track me. There was a smell, sharp and chemical, like copper, mixed with that pine smoke from last night. Then he was behind me. I stopped walking, turned around. The trail was empty. I stood there for a full minute, maybe longer, looking both directions. The path curved away through the birch trees behind me. No one. No sound of footsteps moving away. Nothing. My hands were shaking slightly when I adjusted my pack straps and kept walking. I told myself I was tired, dehydrated maybe. The mind plays tricks when you're alone for days. I'd read about it happening to solo hikers, hallucinations, false memories, the brain filling in gaps with nonsense. But I couldn't stop thinking about that reflective patch, the exact same placement, the exact same size. That afternoon I started noticing the boot prints again, my own boot prints, or prints that looked exactly like mine. They appeared ahead of me on the trail, in the mud, in the soft earth near streams. Sometimes just a few prints, sometimes whole sections. They led north, the direction I was going, but sometimes they veered off trail, into the forest, disappearing between the trees. I tried to ignore them, tried to focus on the trail markers, on making good time, on the landscape. But the prints kept appearing. Around 4 in the afternoon, I started hearing footsteps behind me. I stopped walking. The footsteps stopped. I started again. The footsteps resumed, matching my pace exactly. I turned around several times. No one was ever there. By the time I reached the hut at Abisko, my nerves were shot. I needed to be around people, even if just for one night. But when I opened the door to the common room, it was empty. I checked the logbook. No one else was staying tonight. It was late in the season, fewer hikers. I made dinner mechanically, forcing myself to eat, even though I wasn't hungry. The hut felt too big, too empty. Every creak of the wood settling made me look up. I decided to sleep in one of the smaller side rooms away from the main building. It felt somehow safer, more contained. I closed the door, set my pack against it, and climbed into the bottom bunk. I didn't mean to fall asleep, but exhaustion won. I woke to the sound of footsteps on the porch outside, slow, deliberate, walking the length of the building. I lay perfectly still, barely breathing. The footsteps reached one end, paused, then started back the other direction. They were heavy, purposeful. Then the smell hit me. That pine smoke again, thick and choking, seeping through the gaps around the door. And underneath it, that copper scent, sharp and metallic. The footsteps stopped directly outside my door. Silence. I counted seconds in my head. 10, 20, 30. then 3 slow, deliberate knocks on the door. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The knocks came again, 3 times, measured. I stared at the door in the darkness, at the thin gap underneath it. I could see shadows moving. Something was standing right there, inches away, separated only by a piece of wood. The footsteps moved away, slow and dragging slightly. I heard them circle the entire building once more, then fade into silence. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat with my back against the wall, headlamp on, staring at the door until morning light came through the window. When I finally opened the door, the porch was covered in muddy boot prints. My tread pattern, but the right boot's print was smeared in places, dragged, like something was wrong with the foot making them. I should have turned back then, should have headed south, back the way I came, back to people and roads and normal life. But Abisko was only 1 more day north. 1 more day and I'd be done. I could make it 1 more day. I decided to camp that night instead of using the next hut. The thought of being trapped inside 4 walls again made my chest tight. A tent felt better somehow, more mobile. If something happened, I could run. I found a clearing about an hour before sunset just off the trail. Birch forest on 3 sides, open view to the north. I set up my tent quickly, made a simple dinner, tried to act like everything was normal. The sun set early this far north in late September. By 8, it was dark. I climbed into my tent, into my sleeping bag, and lay there listening to the silence. The forest was completely quiet. No wind, no birds, nothing. I must have dozed off because I woke suddenly to the sound of footsteps outside the tent. Slow, circling. I lay frozen, my sleeping bag pulled up to my chin. The footsteps moved around the tent, always the same slow pace. I could hear the brush of fabric against the outer fly as something passed close. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. Silence, then a voice. It was my own voice I heard, but wrong. Eric. Flat, stilted, no natural rhythm. My entire body went rigid. Eric. I am Eric. Each word spaced out wrong, the emphasis in the wrong places, like someone learning to speak for the first time. I am here. Eric is here. It was definitely my voice, my tone, but delivered like a bad recording, like text to speech that couldn't quite get the cadence right. Eric is in the tent. Eric sleeps. Eric goes to Abisko. My thoughts, plans I'd made in my head. How could it know those things? Eric is tired. Eric wants to go home. I was gripping my sleeping bag so hard my hands hurt. The voice continued, getting caught on words. Eric is here. Eric. Like a scratched record repeating, unable to move forward. The smell of pine smoke and copper flooded into the tent, so strong I could taste it. Metal on my tongue. I heard breathing now, wet, thick, right outside the thin nylon wall, maybe 6 inches from my head. The voice tried again. I am Eric. The footsteps moved away, slow, dragging, slightly like one foot wasn't lifting properly. I didn't sleep. I lay there until dawn, listening, waiting. The footsteps didn't come back, but the smell lingered, When I finally unzipped the tent in the morning light, I saw the prints. Dozens of them, circling the tent over and over, overlapping, chaotic. All my boot pattern, all that same smeared right print. I packed up in under 10 minutes, hands shaking, stuffing things into my pack without my usual care. I just needed to move, needed to finish this. One more day to Abisko, maybe 8 hours of hiking. The trail was covered in my boot prints now. Everywhere I looked, leading ahead, behind, off into the forest. Impossible to tell which were actually mine. I stopped trying to make sense of it and just followed the red trail markers painted on rocks and trees. The footsteps behind me started an hour into the hike. They didn't stop this time. They matched my pace exactly, stayed the same distance back. I didn't turn around. What was the point? I knew nothing would be there, or worse, something would. Around midday, I saw it standing in the birch trees about 50 meters off the trail. The figure, wearing my green jacket, standing perfectly still facing me. I kept walking, didn't stop, didn't stare. An hour later, I saw it again crouched by a stream, head tilted at an angle that wasn't quite right, watching me pass. The third time, it was ahead of me on the trail, far enough that I couldn't make out details, but I could see it was walking the same direction, same pace. Every time I glanced up, it was still there, maintaining the exact same distance. And throughout the day, I heard my voice calling from the forest, "Eric, here, Eric." Always flat, always wrong. The smell of copper got stronger as the day went on. By late afternoon, I could see buildings in the distance. Abisko, the tourist station, the end of the trail. Relief hit me so hard I almost laughed. Almost. I reached the trailhead marker and stopped, hands on my knees, catching my breath. My legs were shaking. From exhaustion or fear, I couldn't tell anymore. Then I smelled it. Pine smoke. I turned around. It was standing on the trail, maybe 15 meters back, closer than it had ever been in daylight. My face, my clothes, but the eyes were too dark, pupils too large, swallowing the iris. The mouth was closed but stretched, like it was trying to remember what a smile looked like but couldn't quite manage it. It tilted its head, the way I do when I'm confused. It opened its mouth. "Eric is here." My voice, broken, wrong. "I am Eric." I turned and walked toward the parking lot, not running. I forced myself not to run. People were there. Normal life was right there. I heard footsteps behind me, matching my pace. I didn't look back. The parking area had other hikers, a tour group unloading from a bus, someone putting gear in their car, normal sounds, normal people. I turned around. The trail was empty. I got in a taxi to Kiruna and took the first flight back to Stockholm. I don't know what I encountered on the King's Trail. I've tried to rationalize it. Exhaustion, altitude, some kind of mental break brought on by isolation and stress. I don't hike alone anymore. I don't hike at all, actually. And I don't think I ever will again. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, please leave a like and subscribe. Really helps me out. I'll see you soon again. Until then, please take care.